As World War II came to an end, there was a feeling of great optimism around much of the world. The Great Depression was in the past, global conflict was finishing, and there was hope on the horizon. Great baby-making conditions. That sounded kind of weird, whatever. And so began the birth phenomenon that created a new generation. A generation simply known as the baby boomers. A baby boomer is anyone who was born between 1946 and 1964. They were the largest generation in most countries' histories. 76 million were born in the United States alone. They're the first generation who are living longer than their parents. And their influence around the world has been notable. From the social movements of the 1960s to the surge of big business and the massive growth of the entertainment industries, baby boomers are behind it all. Boomers are thought to control around 75% of America's wealth and account for over 1/5 of the population. They're currently enjoying the longest retirement periods in history, and they continue to be a crucial focus for marketing and business. Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Elton John, Meryl Streep, Steven Spielberg, David Bowie, Bill and Hillary Clinton, the list is just endless of baby boomers who have not only made their mark but continue to influence. So what exactly created the baby boom? And what caused it to last for almost 2 decades? In a word, hope. In 1946, the world was coming out of an incredibly tough 15-year period. The Great Depression set in around 1929, and just as it was coming to an end, World War II kicked off. A brutal and a long-running war that affected most parts of the globe. During this period, many families were understandably reluctant to bring babies into such an unforgiving world. Only families in rural communities who needed children to help with labor continued to have regular births. However, at the conclusion of World War II, light was beginning to shine at the end of the tunnel. Returning soldiers were rewarded for their efforts with land grants, tax breaks, job incentives. For example, in Australia, returning soldiers were allocated land by the government under the Soldier Settlement Scheme. Similarly, in the United States, the GI Bill gave low-interest mortgages and college funding to those coming home from conflict. This prompted a correlating housing boom, which saw families in most developed countries begin the great move out to the suburbs. At the same time, economies were starting to rebuild. Businesses began to flourish and consumable goods were becoming widely available. Also, labor unions were guaranteeing healthy wages and construction was on the rise everywhere. Literally. With soldiers returning from war to affordable housing and economic optimism, births took off across the developed world. And with that, the age of materialism began, with families starting new lives in the suburbs. Jobs were plentiful throughout the late 1940s and the 1950s, and wages were used to buy exciting new products like televisions, refrigerators, and vacuum cleaners. I know, fancy, right? The likelihood of a prosperous future encouraged people to continue having babies after the initial post-war years. In the United States, 3.5 million babies were born in 1946. That is a 20% jump from 1945. And the pace didn't let up either. 3.8 million in 1947, 3.9 million in 1952, and so on it went, right up until 1964, when the huge number of 76 million babies born in America accounted for 40% of the population. After 1964, birth rates began to gradually taper off due to several factors, like economic instability, social unrest, and a general shifting in attitudes. Births were actively encouraged by governments around the world following the devastation of World War II. The image of a stable and happy nuclear family was promoted as the ideal way forward. And birth rates continue to remain high. The baby boomers not only grew up in a time of considerable economic growth, but they also contributed to it. In the 1950s, the average American income doubled, and in the 1960s, it doubled again. As babies and children, boomers were the focus of marketing from toys, furniture, food, and clothing manufacturers. Their soaring numbers also meant the need for new schools and suburbs to be constructed, leading to a demand for teachers. Most Western countries such as the United States, Britain, and France were investing heavily in their militaries due to the Cold War threat. Many Asian and European economies were still reeling from World War II, which meant massive markets for developed countries' exports. The economic benefits brought about by the baby boomers continued as they became teenagers, in addition to the focus of pop culture, which exploded in the 1960s. The boomers were young, and they had money to spend on music and clothing and food. And thanks to the boomers' appetites, Fast food restaurants soon became a phenomenon in many countries. The simple weight of numbers meant the baby boomers had a huge influence on social movements like the Vietnam War protests, the civil rights movement, and the advancement of feminism. This was the age where the boomers literally made themselves heard in terms of music and film. Spielberg, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Meryl Streep, Bowie, all of those some of which I said earlier. And then all of them, they became huge names, sending the entertainment industry into the stratosphere. As adults, they began to make their presence felt in the business world, in entertainment too, in politics. As the baby boomers entered the 80s, they had a profound effect on consumerism, with the automobile and technological industries particularly benefiting from the disposable income of this historically large generation. And today, the baby boomers continue to thrive. The youngest of this generation, now in their late 50s, a demographic which controls a significant amount of global capital wealth. Even though many boomers are now entering or already in retirement, they're far from content to sit out their time in a nursing home. 70 is the new 50, and 50 is the new 30. The vast number of baby boomers not only have healthy savings and superannuation accounts to draw upon, but they're actually physically in pretty good shape. In fact, it's estimated that the wealthiest generation in history is holding some $30 trillion in assets and savings. And while the children of said baby boomers would dearly love to see some of that wealth, it's really not guaranteed. Boomers are hell-bent on enjoying their twilight years. Some, opting to move into smaller regional areas to enjoy that slower pace of life. Others opting to move into the heart of urban centers to take advantage of the convenience and facilities. Still, others are completely relocating, often to warmer climates. Southeast Asia, the southern United States, Europe, and Australia. Why not, right? Baby boomers are poised to enjoy the longest retirements to date in history. Many are traveling and kicking off bucket list goals and dreams, and others are going into small businesses or back to study. Or learning instruments, another language, fitness classes, happy hours. There just aren't enough hours in the day for some. Of course, the longer boomers stay in retirement, the less that they'll inevitably start to spend. Whether this will be a drain on economies and resources remains to be seen. Perhaps it's singers such as Bruce Springsteen that perfectly reflect the baby boomer philosophy of squeezing every drop out of life. At 72, Springsteen continues to tour, and he doesn't just bang out the same old hits. No, he continues to evolve with his audience, creating new material to suit the new times. On the go with plenty of time left. So the boomers continue to boom.